Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. So, Astro, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about you, Christian?
I'm doing great. Would you like to explain how and why you're late?
Wait, I'm late? How
Yeah,
so?
bro, you showed up late. I was here on time.
I don't think so. I was
Really?
late only for like 3 minutes. Is that considered to be bad in America?
What?
If it's like you're three
I mean,
minutes late?
yeah, that's in America. If you're not, my
Uh,
dad always just tell me if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. So, why am I
uh,
late for all my Saturday morning streams? Well, I guess it's my audience and guests' fault. You know
mm,
how it is.
okay.
Okay, so anyways, this is probably going to be a pretty short stream. There's
Yeah.
not incredibly too much to talk about. Kind of just an
Mm,
explanation, some objections, and more
mm,
explanations and things like that. But we're gonna just
yeah.
we're gonna get right into it. You know everything to do: subscribe, money, blah blah blah. You know how all that stuff works. So, what is the controversy over? Well, this controversy was like 2 weeks ago, and then I had to
Yeah.
reschedule and everything. So the controversy's kind of
Mm,
passed, but I still think
mm,
that this topic comes up frequently,
yeah.
especially
It
with
comes up like
reading the
every
church
2 months.
fathers. Yeah, it comes up with reading the church fathers and discussions with Eastern
Mm,
Orthodox.
yeah.
So just kind of like in a sort of very basic way, like what are we even arguing over? This guy. Hello? He's gone. Anyways, I guess I'll take up on it. So I will share right here. So Trent Horn right here, our good friend Trent Horn, which I hope I'm still live now that I think about it. Can you put in the chat if I'm still live? Oh no, Astro's muted. Okay. So Trent Horn right here, our good friend, Catholic Answers apologist, Trent Horn. He originally did a tweet and talked about how the most important human person in history is Our Lady. Said that it's not Jesus, since Jesus is a divine person. And people took some difficulty to this, saying that it's bad to say that Jesus is not a human person. And Trent Horn pushed back. And then he finally said, "What I mean is that it is impossible to be a divine person and a human person still exists as one person." So that's basically the whole controversy. You can look at the quote tweets, everybody, well, CT's defending him based. Maximologia, he's our friend. He's saying that this is not true. So, yeah, certain people disagreeing with this. So, there's this kind of classic dispute that we have over this question of whether uh, how we describe the hypostasis of Christ, the person of Christ. Do we or can we describe it simply as Christ being a divine person who subsists in two natures, that is, human nature and divine nature? Or can we merely, or do we have to say that is? Do we have to say that uh, the hypostasis or person is itself composite? So that's kind of the broad outline to this question. But Astro, you have before dealt with this question with other individuals.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so I don't know what you said before I lost my connection. I don't think I did. I was just cut out of the stream. I don't know what happened. But anyways, yeah, so in Latin theology, you would describe Christ as a divine person and not a divine human person or hypostasis. And the reason for that is that a hypostasis, an individual substance of rational nature, distinguished from other hypostases by its incommunicable property. So there's a property. Oh,
No,
did I
you're
lose my
fine. We can still
connection
hear
again?
you. No, we can
Oh,
still hear
okay,
you.
okay. Distinguished by an incommunicable property, which distinguishes them from the other hypostases, and that property always is proper to that hypostasis. So since that's the case, we ask, okay, how does Christ have that incommunicable property? Well, the response is an eternal generation. in which the Father, by his eternal generative act, produces a consubstantial Son and communicates his own nature to him. So what is produced is a subsistent hypostasis by its incommunicable property of filiation. So that's right there is a divine hypostasis. And this is why we say that Christ cannot be called a human person, because there, in the human nature which he assumes, there is no proper hypostasis of that human nature, because it has been assumed by something much more principal, which is the hypostasis of the Word. This is why we say that Christ is only a divine person. We do not say that he's a human person because it doesn't make sense according to our own definitions. Well, if you want to say Christ is divine human hypostasis, that's fine, but in Latin theology, at least, we do not say that. And the second is the problem of composition. So composition problem is like we know that in sixth ecumenical council, and especially after like sixth century, Greek fathers speak of a composite hypostasis after incarnations, and this can be found in Saint John Damascene, Saint Sophronius of Jerusalem, Saint Maximus. They all describe Christ as a composite hypostasis. Now, what this means is that so the scholastics basically distinguish what it means for Christ to be a composite. They say composition can be taken in two ways. One is two things combine and constitute a third thing, which is Christ. They reject this sense. They say this is not possible because the hypostasis of Christ is already eternal and cannot be constituted by a combination of two things. The second is that since one person is a simple divine person and subsists in the divine nature, assumes a second nature and thus subsists in two natures. And in that sense, since one person subsists in two and those two remain really distinct, yet at the same time united, there is a notion of composition there. So it's not a perfect composition, but an imperfect one, because a perfect composition requires the very notion of composition which we describe, is that two things combine and constitute a third. So that's the sense in which Christ can be said to be composite. But
so
the
what
point
you're
is,
saying,
yeah,
just kind of to pause right there. So what
yeah,
you're saying is that when we do see Eastern Orthodox or anybody else quoting passages or giving arguments even um, for the composition of Christ's hypostasis, either by just quoting certain church fathers or by even arguing, like they argue, for example, that since Christ's hypostasis subsists in two natures, then therefore we can call his hypostasis composite or divine human. So you're saying with these arguments that these arguments actually they follow. So there's actually a sense in which these are true. But it's not the sense that we mean when we say that Christ is a divine person. Is that correct?
yeah. So in a sense, obviously you have to affirm that Christ is a composite hypostasis because councils affirm it. So it's not
Yeah.
something that you can reject. It's that in what sense he's composite. That's what matters. No, everyone agrees that Christ is a composite hypostasis, but how that is cashed out, that's the question. So we'd say that because the hypostasis of Christ is absolutely simple, right? Because he's identical to divinity. He cannot be, by the reason of hypostasis itself, be called composite. Why? Because if a person is simple, that means he's identical to divinity. Now, divinity is absolutely simple, so there's no way that for hypostasis in itself to be composite. And that's why we say that Christ's hypostasis is really distinct from his humanity. This is what old Thomists and old scholastics teach, that Christ's hypostasis cannot be identical to a contingent human nature. So
Mhm.
that human nature remains really distinct from the simple hypostasis. This is why we say that Christ is united to human nature, not identified with human nature. Or as St. Thomas says, divinity is predicate of Christ, both in abstract and concrete, but humanity is only predicate of him in concrete. So that we can say Christ is his divinity, but we cannot say Christ is his humanity. Rather, we can say that Christ is a human, but we can say Christ is God and that Christ is Godhead itself. And
So
this is because, yeah.
could you elaborate a little more, I guess, on this distinction between a person or hypostasis considered in itself, and then a person or hypostasis considered um, in that which it possesses?
Yeah, so as already explained, by the very definition of hypostasis, which is an individual substance of rational nature, distinguished from other hypostases by its incommunicable property. And since we know that the Christ hypostasis is really distinct from his human nature, then it's possible for Christ to be considered in himself. Why? Because human nature in no way gives any new perfections or qualities or anything that would change the hypostasis of Christ. So hypostasis of Christ can be considered in
Game over.
itself.
Okay, I'll give him a minute since he cut out. So I will probably not be answering any questions.
Considering the human nature.
Oh,
And
okay, you're back now.
if somebody objects, but hello?
You were
Wait,
gone for
how
30
is my
seconds.
mic muted?
I
just
muted
don't know
it,
that.
and then I
No,
guess
you
you
know.
unmuted.
Oh gosh. Okay. What was I saying?
No, I just muted you because you were cutting out, and I didn't want that to be on the
Can you
playback or
hear me
anything like
now?
that. Yeah,
I
I
don't
can
know
hear
what's
you.
wrong
So
because
you
my
were.
connection is okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with my connection as I'm looking at
Mm.
the internet bar. I don't know what's happening, but yeah.
Yeah, you were
So,
just talking
and
about the
I'm
incommunicable property, and then you cut
yeah,
out
yeah.
for a
So,
second.
and since the human nature in no way gives any new perfections or anything, or basically contributes anything to constitution of Christ's hypostasis. For Christ would be a hypostasis even if he did not assume human nature. There would be no change on Christ's hypostasis, whether he assumed the human nature or he did not. He was already constituted as a hypostasis in his eternal generation. So that contributes nothing to his constitution of Christ's hypostasis. So the hypostasis can be considered in itself without without conceiving of human nature, and
Did you?
that's how.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful is with understanding this, because some people might be confused about how
Mm,
there is no change in the hypostasis by the assumption of the humanity.
yeah.
But could you
Mhm.
explain a little bit how when we speak of the human nature terminating
Yeah.
in the divine hypostasis, or there being a real relation of the humanity to the divine hypostasis, but not, the other way around?
Oh, I cut. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, if anyone is familiar with real and logical relations or relations of reason, an example of this is basically creation, where God has a relationship of creator to creation, and creation has a relationship of creature to creator. On the part of creation, there's a real relation of dependency on God, in which one depends on its for very existence, operation, power, on the one who gives him existence, power, and creation. Operation. And on the part of the one who's creating, there's only a relation of reason with no dependence. But there are some relations which are real relations, like the relations within Godhead. So relationship of father to son, because they're in the same nature and they're ordered toward each other relatively. Father is really related to the son by giving him nature, and son is really related to the father as receiving that nature. Now, in incarnation, because human nature is outside God, so and it's considered part of creation. And since God has no real order to creation, when God assumes a human nature, there's going to be only a relation of reason on the part of God to human nature. But because human nature is united to God, there's going to be real relation on the part of human nature to God. So that means union. So from this, one conclusion follows, and it's that the union which we speak of is not eternal but temporal, and it's really in the created nature itself. So the
Hmm.
union is really in human nature, not in God, because if that was the case, God himself would change, which is impossible.
Yeah, so this would kind of not only posit some dependence of the
Yeah.
hypostasis on creation, but it would also
Mhm.
posit some sort of mutability, correct?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This is why
Mhm.
so when you read someone like did I cut off again?
No, no, you're good. I can hear you.
Hello. Oh, okay.
You're good.
Let me find this quote from Saint Maximus. Um,
Yeah, and the difference between a hypostasis and a person, usually we use the terms interchangeably, but the technical difference is that a person adds to hypostasis the note of rationality. That's the only difference.
Okay, yeah. So Saint Maximus, in one of his works, says, "The Son did not, because of the union, become identical with his flesh in any way in which he's identical with the Father and the Spirit because of their one substance." So he's saying that the way Christ is identical to his divinity, in which he's one with the Father and the Spirit, is not the same in which he's identified with his humanity. And then he adds, although he did render that naturally mortal flesh life-giving because of its union with him, if he had become so identical with his flesh, he would have been shown to subsist in immutable nature and would have both altered the substance of that flesh into what was not, and made the union itself identical with that nature. So he's saying that the way Christ is in union with the human nature is not the same as he's in union with the divine nature.
Mhm.
And this is what the scholastics talk about, of a real identity with hypostasis and its divine nature, and real distinction of hypostasis and its human nature, because human nature is composite by hypostasis simple, so they cannot be identical or one in reality.
So, how does this fit in with the type of language that we use for the works which are done by God according to his humanity? Like, for example,
The
using the language of God
union,
died or the blood of God
the
or anything like that. You're cutting out, by the way.
not
Um,
like
I'll mute you for a second while you robot right there. But yeah, I guess the entire question is how does the predication of these human acts to a divine subject, um, how does that kind of fit in with this whole dispute over whether the hypostasis is composite or simple? And can the position taken by those who will radically or rapidly deny, rapidly, I know that's tough, that's intense language, those who would sort of radically deny any sort of way in which we can speak about a simple hypostasis, like would their position somehow be destroyed about the type of grammar that we use about God? Okay, you're unmuted now.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah. So since the union of human nature is with a divine hypostasis, and the union is made in the hypostasis, not in nature, contra Miaphysites, we say that this hypostasis, which is truly united to human nature, dies, eats, walks, and does all of those actions proper to humanity in that human nature. So, what is predicated of human nature? What is proper to human nature can be predicated of one and the same divine Son, because he has that nature and is truly united to it. And there are some actions which are like purely on a purely proper to human nature, and some are theandric actions. So these theandric actions would be like miracles. So when Christ heals leper, we call that a theandric action, because because the healing is for by the divine power, but it's through the human nature. That is when Christ touches the leper. So it's called divine human activity, because it's done so to speak partially by divine and partially by human, insofar as the healing is by divine nature, but it's through the medium of human nature which Christ
Mhm.
touches that leper. And some are like properly human actions, so not divine, like walking, sleeping, and all that, and they're not basically called theandric.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I guess more to the point, when we talk about Christ sleeping, um, do we say that God is sleeping? And of course, I know the answer to this. I'm just trying to have you elucidate the problem a little bit more.
Yeah, we can say God slept, because the subject which has that human nature is the divine Son.
So, if someone were to hold that on the like, let's say somebody held that on the part of the hypostasis,
Hmm.
not on the part of that which the hypostasis subsists in,
Hmm.
um, if they were to hold that that was composite, would they be able to say that God died on the cross, for example, in the proper
Hmm.
sense?
I would say that they would be able to say that, but the problem is then they would be basically denying simplicity of God, which is problematic because
So
if
would they be saying it
prior,
in the same sense that we say it? Because the reason that we're able to properly say it is because the hypostasis that the humanity terminates in is
mhm,
simply divine. Um,
yeah,
but if you have some sort of hypostasis, which is composite on the part of the hypostasis itself between humanity and divinity, wouldn't you not be able to, in the same proper sense, but only by some sort of relation, say that God died or God slept or anything like that?
yeah.
Oh, this guy's cutting out again. His internet's terrible. Okay, I'll give him a minute. What else? What else? I'm trying to think about other kind of lines of inquiry because I think this is very interesting and it's very important because the determination of this question um, on a few fronts is very important. I mean, primarily, it's going to express a central mystery of the gospel because we say that the merit of Christ's passion, unless you're a Scotus, the Scotus deny this for some really weird reason. We would say that the merit of Christ's passion is infinite, not on the part of the humanity, but because the hypostasis in which this humanity terminates is of infinite dignity because it's divine hypostasis. So it's important for that. It's important. Oh, he's gone. It's important apologetically, um, talking with Muslims or um, others who deny the hypostatic union. We need to be able to be clear about this and keeping the language that the scholastic spoken. This is very important, I think, is when it comes to the language that the fathers speak in. Of course, it was directed against certain heresies that denied the incarnation, and of course, it can be taken in a proper sense, as we went over earlier. But um, when we go over terms that we use in scholastic theology, we are attempting to take terms in their most proper sense. This is unlike other disciplines like liturgics or homiletics. You might use less proper language in order to get your idea across. But in scholastic theology, um, often we're attempting to use that which is most proper and requires the least amount of negations. So, simply saying that Christ is his hypostasis is composite, while of course it's true in one sense, um, is liable to misunderstanding, and it's also not taken in its sort of proper and fullest sense. So that's why it's important for us to be very precise about this, and it may be sort of fine to use the composite hypostasis language when talking with Miaphysites or Nestorians. But if you're going to use that same type of language when talking about, let's say, a Jew or a Muslim or a secularist or something like that, they are. It's going to be a barrier to being able to explain what we're talking about when we speak about the incarnation. So that's why all of this is so important, and then for like a bunch of other reasons that I didn't mention. Okay, you're back. You're back, Astro. You can
Oh
continue
god,
now.
dude, I have no idea why I keep cutting up because my internet is fine. I'm looking at my internet and everything is fine. There's nothing wrong. There are no
Mhm.
errors. There are no CRC errors, but I don't know why I cut off. I don't know. But anyways, what was the question? I forgot.
Yeah, so I was asking about the basically the communicatio idiomatum and how this
Hmm.
fits in with the hypostasis being simply divine.
Oh yeah. So, and how they conceive of composition in Christ.
Uh, if we were to speak of
Yeah.
Christ's hypostasis as simply composite rather than simply simple.
Yeah. Yeah. If that was the case, the hypostasis itself was composite, and then that would mean that the hypostasis in the union of divine and human natures was came into existence, because that's a proper notion of composition which I mentioned. But if we hold it in a qualified sense, which is not that, but rather the simple hypostasis being composite insofar as it subsists two persons, then two natures, then we can truly say that God died, God walks, God sleeps, and all that. But if Christ in itself, that is, the very hypostasis without the consideration of natures, is composite, then we have to ask how is he composite? Is he composite before becoming incarnate or after? Well, if it's after, then we have to ask. Oh, did I cut off again?
No, I can hear you.
Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah. So if after the incarnation the hypostasis itself becomes composite, then we ask, does this mean by the combination of divinity and humanity they constituted a new thing, which is this composite hypostasis called Christ? If they say no, then that leads to our position, which is then that means the hypostasis in itself did not become composite, but in a qualified sense. But if they don't say that, then that's a problem. And that
So
means what? Yeah.
no, I was just gonna say, how does this kind of fit in with the I guess the best way to put it is the sort of inequality of propriety when it comes to naming with Christ. So to kind of make that a little less obscure, like we can say in a proper sense, because of the divine hypostasis, that when Christ died, God died. We can say in a proper sense that Our
Yeah.
Lady
Yeah.
is the mother of God. We say these things
Mhm.
properly. But
Yeah.
if, for example, we said like a man upholds the universe,
Mhm.
we there is devotional and liturgical and homiletical language um,
Yeah.
where individuals, church fathers, saints, they will use terms like this, like a
Mhm.
man does this or that type of
Yeah.
action that is proper to God. But
Mhm.
how are these two different phrases or actions being differently applied? Is one proper, the other improper? Are they both proper? Are they both improper? Like, and by proper, we mean in a non-metaphorical sense, basically.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
It.
how do these fit together?
Yeah. It's
He
interesting
cuts out right when I ask him.
that
Okay, can you start over again?
you
You cut out right when I asked
ask
you.
that
This guy. You know, right when I
question.
finish asking him the question, he
Because
cuts out. Oh, then he unmutes himself.
some
Man, this was like the crux of the best illustrative question ever. And this guy's over here roboting right now. Yeah, C3PO over here. You know, this guy, this guy. Can you believe it? That was a really good question. Okay, so I guess to illustrate more for people who may not have understood my question, and to I guess anticipate a bit what the answer is going to be, the um, basically the question is we can either call Christ God or we can call Christ man. Both of these are licit terms to give to our Lord. So we can kind of switch and mix up the way that these predications work. So, for example, we may say that God died. On the other hand, we may say that a man created the universe. So the question is, when we say that God died versus when we say that a man created the universe, are these on equal ground and equal footing? Or is one of them proper and the other one, you know, being poetic, let's say? So the answer is going to be basically that in order for the redemption of the human race even to happen, there needs to be an infinite dignity in the person who redeems. So our Lord Jesus Christ needs to be personally or hypostatically God. So when we actually say that God died on the cross, we are speaking in a proper and not an improper sense, because the humanity which is affected on the cross is the humanity which terminates in the second person of the Trinity. But on the other hand, when we say something like man creates, we're actually speaking in a poetical manner, not speaking in a proper manner. So, okay, I will let you back on, and you can. Oh man, you muted yourself, so I can't unmute you, my guy.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So, can you?
I was in a. Yeah, I
Mashallah.
just want to read this before I cut off. So this will basically answer your question. So the question you asked was actually asked. Someone asked Saint Thomas this question. He says, "This is a letter from one of friars to Saint Thomas, and it can be found on AQUINAS.cc. It's in Article 4. Let me see what's the letter is called. It's called Letter to Brother Jared of Besanken. I don't know if I'm butchering his last name, but anyways. So he asks, the fourth question is whether the little hands of the child Jesus created the stars. This is the question. So
Yeah.
St. Thomas says, to which I respond that this way of speaking is not proper, for the little hands are the hands of his humanity, to which does not pertain to create stars. But because Christ is one and the same, perfect in the human and divine nature, a phrase of this sort is able to be explained sensibly, as when it is said, the little hands of this child created the stars. That is, this boy having little hands created the stars. So it's referring to hypostasis, it's signifying the hypostasis. Holy teachers sometimes make use of such a way of speaking in order to express the union of two natures, as when the phrase.
Okay, this guy. I have it pulled up anyways. So, let's say holy teachers sometimes make use of such a way of speaking in order to express the union of the two natures, as when the phrase, the hands that molded us have been pierced with nails, is sung in certain churches. Nevertheless, expressions of this sort ought not to be extended nor preached to the people. If this was already preached about, however, I do not think it must be revoked unless an error or scandal about it has arisen, in which case it is necessary for the sensible explanation to be related, because the souls of the simple, insofar as possible, are not to be troubled. So basically what he's saying is there's kind of two ways in which this could be taken. So this can be, on the one hand, taken like the hands of the child Jesus created the universe. That can be taken in the sense of the hands which are possessed by the child Jesus, that these hands in themselves created the universe, or created according to these hands. That would be, in its most proper sense, erroneous, although it could be taken in a sort of poetical sense. And then also, kind of on a second layer as well, if we say that this man, for example, or this child created the universe, this child does not necessarily connote this child or this man according to his humanity, but can be spoken of according to his hypostasis. So even in this way, we kind of have to have a second layer, which removes any sort of badness of expression, if taken in its most proper sense. But when we say God died on the cross, we're actually speaking in a proper and formal sense. We're saying that God died on the cross in the humanity in which God possesses. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, Astro, are you back? This guy.
Hello?
I don't think he's back. Are you back?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, you read it, so that's the question. And the second one is from Suma. He says, I answered that. This is from question 16 of third part. He says, I answered that, granted the reality of both natures, that is divine and human, and the union and of the union in person and hypostases, this is true and proper. Man is God, even as this, God is man. For this word man may stand for any hypostasis of human nature, and thus may stand for the person of the Son of God, whom we say is a hypostasis of human nature. Now it is manifest that the word God is truly and properly predicated of the person of God the Son, as was said in the first part. Hence it remains that this is true and proper. Man is God. And the second one is, and this is the like biggest controversy that gets brought up like every 2 months on Twitter, and it's whether we can call Christ a creature. Christ. So is Christ a creature? St. Thomas says that I answer that, as Rome says, words spoken amiss lead to heresy. Hence, with us and heretics, the very words ought not to be in common, lest we seem to be to countenance their error. Now, the Arian heretics said that Christ was a creature and less than the Father, not only in his human nature, but even in his divine person, that is, before incarnation. And hence, we must not say absolutely that Christ is a creature or less than the Father, but with a qualification, that is, in his human nature. So he's saying that Christ is a creature. Yes, we can grant that, but we have to distinguish. Christ is a creature qua hypostasis. We cannot say that. That's impossible. We cannot say qua hypostasis Christ is created. But qua human nature, you can say that. And the same applies to other things. For instance, we can say Christ as a man is a creature. We can say that, but we have to distinguish. We say Christ as a man is a creature. If we refer to hypostasis, you say no. If we refer to human nature, then we say yes. We can say that. So we always need to distinguish these two because, as I said, there's a real distinction between hypostasis of Christ and his human nature. So we have to be careful when we say Christ is a creature because qua hypostasis that cannot be admitted. And Damien posted this nice quote from St. Maximus where he says, Christ is not by hypostasis mortal and immortal, nor is he powerless and omnipotent, visible and invisible, created and uncreated. But he is the former by nature, that is by human nature, and the latter by hypostasis. So he himself understands that this is the case, that hypostasis in itself is uncreated, immortal, omnipotent, not created. But he's only created, not omnipotent, not omnipresent, qua humanity. So this is how we should speak. So hypostasis in itself cannot be said to be created, mutable, composite, and all that. I think that's
Okay.
it, basically.
So,
Yeah.
in summary, is Trent Horn a heretic on the Incarnation?
Trent Horn is not a heretic because he was just teaching the Catholic view, and the Catholic view is actually found in Pope Pius XII encyclical on Sacred Heart, where he explicitly says that there's one divine nature, and he immediately adds with a duality of natures, divine and human.
One divine
And
person with a duality of natures, you mean? You said one divine nature with the duality of natures. Oh,
yeah,
this guy's cutting out now. It's so over. It's so over.
sorry.
Okay, in summary, Trent Horn has expressed exactly what our scholastics taught, exactly in line with the fathers, and actually in line with the papal magisterium itself. So, no, he does not deny the incarnation. No, he's not a heretic on the incarnation. And I'm sure Mr. Horn meant it in the exact sense that we have explained it. So, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe we'll have a GoFundMe for Astro's internet connection or something because it's terrible. But
That's
anyways,
so
thank you, Astro.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you have any parting words?
No. I'm basically done today. I'm so mad. Let's just end this.
So mad.
And I
You
literally
just
don't get that
died.
there's nothing wrong with my internet, but StreamYard, it just doesn't work. I don't know why.
Yeah, cope. You're
What do you
coping so
mean?
hard right now.
Okay. You can join Discord after this call and check and see that my internet is actually okay.
I don't think I will.
Okay.
Yeah, cry about it. Okay, anyways, thank
Okay.
you, everybody. And as always, God bless.